welcome to another episode of the Culture Hour. My name is Shelley Smith. I am your founder, and the person who is not just passionate but obsessed about workplace culture. Remember, you have to define it in order to build it, because building and maintaining is far less costly than going into repair mode. Today, I am so thrilled to have another amazing guest. So this is a continuation of my interviews that I'm doing with owners and executives who responded to a call out that I did for one of my Forbes articles. And there's some out of the 75 that responded. They were all really good, but there were a couple of dozen that really caught my eye, and I just had to have them on the podcast. So today, please welcome Meghan Gardner. And Meghan, did I say your last name right?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
thank you,
all
Shelley.
right. So Meghan is the founder and the CEO of Guard Up Inc. Guardian Adventures. I have to tell you, when I read your what it is that you do, I was like, I want to go, me. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so Guardian Adventures, which owns and operates Wizards and Warriors and Zombie summer camps, programs, and events. How fun. You're truly living the dream, or living my dream. These informal educational camps and events are STEM and story-based experiences where, instead of watching movies and playing video games about heroes, and I always get tripped up on this. You say it.
Mythology?
Yeah.
Well, it's based
creatures.
Mythological. So
Yeah.
It's based in mythology, history, and literature.
There we go. Let's see. The participants get to live an adventure. For the past 20 years, Meghan has headed up the information and programs camps for kids, teens, and even adults. Yes, to play a character of their own design and fighting monsters with foam swords and Nerf blasters, along with anything to do with physics, biology, chemistry, and more. Meghan is the lead STEM curriculum designer, and she is amazing because, you know, part of this is also the parent company is a Princeton Review, and in development of the mission to Mars, STEM adventures in East Asia and in the United States. She's also a guest lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and other major universities as an international speaker on the topic of information education and learning from all ages. She's been interviewed by a plethora of folks, including Disney Radio, NPR, and The New Yorker and Wired Magazine, as well as a variety of other outlets. And now she can add that, the Culture Hour as well. Everything about what Meghan does, and she's clearly passionate about and has an expert around, is obviously STEM driven. So, and you do some amazing things on your personal time as well, and giving back to the community, which I absolutely love and adore. So, Meghan, is there anything specific about Guard Up before we get started on your responses to the questions that I posed for the Forbes article? Is there anything that I didn't say that I found in your bio that you would like to talk about with Guard Up, or even how you got here?
I'll spare you the long story about how we got here, because it was just a long series of pivots that largely revolved around my own daughter's interests, who are now adults.
Okay.
But when they were little, they wanted to participate in interactive storytelling, where basically they play a character in the story I'm making up. And I realized it was a great way to educate them about everything from decision-making and teamwork and leadership skills, critical thinking, to actual STEM education. Because the whole model is built upon a computer game. So, but no computers. Yeah. So you're essentially as if you're in a computer game and you are designing your own character, and you're navigating a mystery or a story, and you're battling monsters and winning treasure and everything. It's the same experience, but it's live. And the idea is to utilize stories and the way that stories inspire us and captivate our imagination and create a level of immersion and ownership to educate. I mean, when you think about it, human beings started learning through stories when we were in caves. Way back before there was anything as complex as civilization. They would have cave paintings and storytelling around the story or around the fire. And what that served to do was to teach the community and especially the children the important functions of that small group, the tribe, and also what you should and shouldn't do, and the qualities of being a good citizen of that group. So, so we're just doing that. We're bringing stories back into education, because what we have found, and what a lot of studies are beginning to really uncover, is that stories, when something is taught with a story, it creates both context as well as emotional engagement. And when you have those two elements, you have better understanding and better retention. So we say, you know, this obviously needs to be a very big part of the educational system. And since it's very hard to change the public education system, because it's a really big ship that takes a couple of weeks to turn around.
Just
you know,
a couple?
well, you know, it's actually, my dad gave it. My dad was in the Navy, and he said that on those really large ships, it literally could take days to a week to turn around and go in the opposite direction, because they were that big.
Yeah.
And he was a principal of a high school, and he said the education system is like an even bigger ship that can take years to slowly turn around and start heading, adjusting course.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, you know, well, okay, but we're not saddled by all the requirements for the state and the federal government. So we decided what we need to do is bring in highly creative educators, largely people who are frustrated by the public education system, especially teachers who decide they want to go and pursue education, and then they get an experience with it, and like, you know, teaching to the test was not what I had in mind.
Yeah.
And then we recruit them, because in our after school programs and our summer camps and our year-round adventures, they can actually thrive in that creative environment and teach the way they in their mind thought that teachers should be teaching.
I love everything about that. There are so many things I want to unpack and pick your brain on for the viewers and the listeners. I would love to hear, if we've got some time outside of what we're going to get to here in a minute that prompted our connection, but I would love to hear about the perspectives that you're seeing with women, girls of all ages inside of STEM, because that's a continuing, I think, opportunity, which I would love to hear you weigh in on that. When I saw the focus of what you do, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to have that conversation. Number two, I loved how you talked about the passions. It's one of the things that I'm always talking about. People, we're all hardwired for certain things, and we fit just right from a culture standpoint when all of those elements come together. And being able to lean in and define what right looks like, you know, and storytelling is definitely in itself is a lost art, and there is a lot to be said. So obviously I love that element, and would like to hear a little bit more, if we've got some time, about how you guys have crafted those different experiences. And then of course I would love to hear how you have transitioned, which I know we're going to get into this, during the COVID and now the protests, and kind of what that's doing to impact your team, obviously delivering in person, real time, and some of the shifts that you've taken. So those are things that hopefully we'll be able to get to today on a variety of ways for the listeners and viewers to kind of keep them engaged. So with that being said, one of the questions that I asked you on the response that you gave was, have you increased spending in your workplace culture over the last 90 days? And if so, what have you done specifically? And you responded with a big yes, and we spent 3 times as much. And so unpack that for us, and I'll let you go into the why, the shifts, and let's just have a conversation.
Sure. So I think the single biggest thing we did was, you know, in the discussion with our executive team, was the understanding that the biggest antidote to stress is play. I'll just put that out there. I would say that that's like a law. Okay.
Wow.
When you play, you totally shift your mind into a creative center, and you start to let go of a lot of the things that are stressing you, and especially when you activate imagination, and it allows you to begin to actually immerse yourself into something else, which then allows your brain to start working through on a subconscious level solutions for the stress that you're under. But because you're letting go of that severe attachment to the problem and the stress involved, the emotional stress, and you're freeing up your brain's resources to do something else. And play is the best way to do that. We hit an entirely different, there's some great studies out there that show the brain experiencing play and the difference between trying to work through a stressful problem versus the experience of working through a problem in a playful way. So knowing this and knowing that we have highly creative individuals and that you cannot create at your peak level when you're under stress. A little bit of stress is good. A little bit of stress actually can amplify your performance. A lot of stress is actually very detrimental to creativity. So we decided that what we needed to do was to provide, not just provide the opportunity for more play, but actually to kind of require it. So in our weekly all hands staff meetings, we have, it's supposed to be an hour-long meeting where we go through new policies coming out, problem solving things with clients, any shifts and things. We're now taking all that outside of the meeting, other than some key elements, and 45 minutes of that 1 hour is now spent playing. And what we do is we do fun little trivia things. We share stories. We actually sometimes play test stuff that we're creating for other kids, where all the staff people are the kids now. And one thing I remember our curriculum director said is, okay, everybody, I'm going to count to 10. And what you have to do is somewhere in your home, you have to find 3 items that without speaking will help us know what your favorite movie is.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, ready, set, and then boom, everyone was off of their screens and running around their house. And you see people like running past their camera, and they're coming back and they've got an armful of stuff, and some people have puppets, and it was great.
Wow.
And so it's stuff like that. And then we generally do some social stuff together, but now, I think it was 3 weeks ago, my ops director stopped off, and I went out on a shopping spree, and I bought a bag full of craft beers and little sample different types of nip bottles of different types of alcohol we'd always been talking about, and filled up a bag. And then he put in a bunch of snacks, and I wrote a handwritten thank you note to each one of them, and he delivered it. He went all around Eastern Massachusetts, driving around, and hand delivered that package to each of our staff people so that they could, and then what we do is we cracked open the beers later on together, and we tried them out. And then last week we did a staff pizza party where we emailed everybody gift cards to have them order pizza or whatever food in, and we all sat around and we ate it together. And in that one, we actually talked about, that wasn't so much play, that was actually talking about loss. Okay. We actually came together because we're used to a very different summer, a very in-person, very active, very creative, very physically creative environment. And that's been drastically changed. Yeah. Not taken away, but really changed. And we wanted to recognize with our staff that with all change comes loss. And so we just took some time to all of us talk about that loss and to recognize it and be okay with feeling that way. And but one of the great things that I didn't expect was, and we'll touch on later how our company pivoted, was the number of people who said, it's actually a mixed bag for me. Yes, there's been some loss. And on the other hand, I'm really excited about this new project that we're doing. And it's really tapping into another different level of creativity for me. So it was good to hear that it's not all just gloom and doom and loss. It's also stuff that people are excited about. So, and I love that. I really feel like our team has never been this tight before. We're all going through this together, and we're all taking time to play together and to grieve together. Mm-hmm. And to recognize that what's going on, basically, and to talk about it. And that creates a level of bonding, I think, that we've never experienced before as a company.
and that we missed in business course, I think, period. We kind of went through this mode of separation. I know when I first was brought in as I was 18, 19 into Marriott, and there was this intentional separation of employee versus management, and you didn't, the two kind of weren't supposed to intertwine, if you will, and you didn't get personal with people, and you didn't have, and we swung from one pendulum to now it's like, no, we had it all wrong. We had it all wrong. We need to have an understanding of what a person is going through to better engage them, motivate them, respect them in the workplace. And this crisis, to your very point, it's forcing us to do that. You're on a Zoom call with your team, and you have to recognize that there are children, and there are roommates, and there are significant others, and there are pets. And you just got to keep going, because that's our life, right? That's right. Our life. Why not embrace that and to understand that? And I've heard so many owners and executives express what you've just said. We've leaned into transparency. We've leaned into communication in a different way. We have not, the ones that are thriving are the ones that are going into, innovating on the pivot, which one of my colleagues coined the phrase, and I love that, Dr. Sarah Spradlin. So I use that, but I always have to say, she's the one who said it. But being able to use our imagination in a very different, productive way, it is amazing what unleashes the possibilities, the white space, the creativity. And those are all the things that you and your team do naturally with Guard Up, but even you're experiencing on a new level. And I love that, and I respect that so much. So tell us what the biggest aha moments are, and maybe you've already actually articulated that, but specifically anything that's really given you a hiccup that you guys have maybe had to focus on and pivot differently, and or this was massive and I didn't expect it. So whatever you want to say there.
Yeah. Well, I think for AHA, which was 3 weeks before we closed our castle doors, and as you see behind me, we actually do work in a castle. We actually took a long, hard look at this and said, you know what, there's a chance we're going to have to close down. Of course, at that time we thought, they were coming out and saying, other states were saying we're going to close for 2 weeks. And I'm like, it's going to be a month.
3 months later. Yeah.
And I said, so we need to be able to do something that's going to allow us to settle in. We're not going to push the pause button. We have to pivot. So I brought it to my team, and here's the other key thing that I can't say enough about is when you hire people, and I don't care what industry you're in, if you're hiring somebody, one of your number one considerations, if there's any kind of creativity or innovation around what they're going to be doing at all, they should have an improv theater background.
Very cool.
Yes. And you know why?
Well, I do, but you can tell the listeners, but I do, because I've studied on this and read articles, and yeah, go ahead.
Do you remember the term?
No.
There is a key term that defines it is yes and.
Yes.
Because in improv, the idea is you're up there on the stage with somebody, they throw something to you, they introduce you to a story, and you are not allowed to go, no. You have to say yes, and you have to build on it. And you might throw in your own little curve to it, but you are using what is given to you in order to create something new or keep the direction and momentum going. And so the people that we prefer to hire have some type of theater background, and if you have a theater background, you have an improv background.
Yeah.
And it could be anything from live action role playing to actual stage theater, but they have to have the ability to say yes and. And so when we brought to our team and said, here's what we're thinking about doing. We're going to be taking everything online, all of our adventures, and possibly, if this goes through the summer, or at that point we'd said, and possibly spring break, because we thought that it was possible that our full week of spring break adventures would have to be online.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad I said that, because I was right at that time that we were going to be closed for spring break. And that is a 1 week of full day adventures that we would have to figure out how to do online.
Mm-hmm.
And our team was like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's see how we can do this. So for 3 weeks before we closed, 3 weeks before we closed our door, we started investigating different programs, different environments, how to do different, how to translate what we do live into an online environment. And literally the day after we closed our doors, we opened online. And in the first week, we had 70% of our clients transfer over. Within 2 weeks after that, we had roughly 90% of our clients. Today, I think we have about 98% of our clients online.
That's
and with
solid.
us. Yeah. So, and now we're heading into the summer, and we've already made the announcement that come June and July, we are not going live with camps. We're going to be doing online camp. Now, there are camps that are choosing to go live, and there are a lot of very strict guidelines that the CDC has put out in the EEC. But we're in a wait and see mode where we'd rather see what happens with their efforts. I do not like making my clients' children, who I kind of see as my children, into guinea pigs.
Right. The risk.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's just too much risk right now, especially because of how hard we got here in the Massachusetts area. So, so we're in a wait and see mode to see what happens, and I'm already reading about one camp in Tennessee that was shut down 5 days after they opened because COVID ripped right through their staff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, it looks like we're making the right decision thus far. We're still waiting to find out about August, whether or not we'll be doing anything live, but we are fully prepared to do either scenario. And so because of the experience the success we had with our spring break, we were able to then immediately take that model and say, now we need to be able to do 10 weeks of this, not just 1 week. And, when we found, our staff came to us and said, that was exhausting. So we're like, okay, what we need to do is we need to hire more staff and have shifts. So there's a morning shift, and then that group they're not running the program anymore. They're pulled off the screen. They're doing something else. And then an afternoon shift comes in. So because what we're finding is our kids didn't have anything close to screen fatigue because they're so engaged, and we get the kids up and physically active and stuff like that. But our staff who are running the programming, they're having to juggle a lot. They're having to control a lot. They were getting fatigued. Yeah. So we realized we had to change that model. So there was a lot this has been a phenomenal learning experience. I can't even begin to say. I mean, I never expected going into this year, first of all, who did? I mean, that we'd be in this situation, but that we would learn so much, and that in that process of learning also come together so tight as a team, and how much my team is in this great balance of being able to be transparent, because it's not all a bed of roses. Don't get me wrong. It's exhausting work. And we're still facing hiccups and challenges that we have to address, but we're documenting them. We're coming up with solutions. We're sharing those solutions, and we all know we're in this as a team. And there are even times when we'll meet with our staff and we say, "Are you taking your screen breaks?" Because we are mandating that you have to take 10-minute breaks. Just it's paid. Don't put it on the time clock. It's just get away from all screens, go outside. If it's raining outside, I don't care. Go somewhere else. Don't look at a screen for 10 minutes and then come back. And we check in with people. We're like, did you get your screen break? Are you getting, because otherwise it's burnout, and burnout does not help anybody.
Right.
Especially doesn't help the company and your clients. So we're really keeping, a lot of attention on that to make sure that our staff are, at one point feeling taken care of, but at the same time, you have to empower them to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. You can't always be in there mandating everything. You have to say, though, please get off the screen for a sufficient amount of time, and accommodating like you said, the cat walks across the screen. Well, thankfully with children, when you have pets, that's nothing but a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
um, but it's also, you know, we try to get pick up your laptop, go outside. And we're okay with hearing birds in the background during a staff meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a plane goes overhead, it's okay. Mute your microphone, we'll pick it back up.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather know my staff are outside in the backyard, getting sunshine, breathing fresh air, and working, that they feel that they have to be in, you know, 9 to 5, focused just on a screen in a sterile environment.
Yeah.
So and you know what? People say, well, that's all, you know, I've been talking to some people, that's so touchy-feely, I'm just not that kind of person. I'm like, then let's talk numbers and cents.
Yeah.
Retention, staff output.
Yes.
All of this translates directly to
Yes.
a better end product. If your staff are happy, they are actually better at what they're doing.
Yes.
And they're able to adjust faster, they're able to pivot faster, and this is a time of massive pivot.
Yes.
So staff morale and staff culture is a key part. It's actually, I would say, the number one concern that anyone with employees should be facing right now, looking hard at their staff culture.
Yes.
Because if they're not, they are not at the peak of their performance in the situation.
Meghan, I feel like you I need to send you a check. You like have read everything I've written, that I've thought, that I've podcasted, and I love it so much. Obviously, as a culture curator, that is absolutely what I believe and know to be true, and know that when I have clients that lean into that,
yeah,
their success, their stress, their happiness of why they have a business, why they're in business, their profitability, it all comes together when your team and your people are engaged. And to your earlier comment, that's when the endorphins and the ideas and the
yes.
thought sharing start to come out, when you're like, yes, yes, yes. To your point, yes, and it just
yes.
opens up a conversation in such a different way. Well, I was going to ask you in closing, like, what could you say to articulate your experience? And you leaned right into that without me having to say that, and your plead and how you just made your comment to those listening about the culture. And if they don't get it, they need to get on, because you're right. The turnover is going to happen. And by the way, if the turnover isn't happening now, wait until you fully reopen your door to what your new normal is. Trust me, people will say they're coming back, and they might even come back, but it's going to be for a little stench, because they're going to jump ship into people like Meghan, who get it, got it, and have leaned in and shared those successes and embraced the most valuable asset, which is absolutely the team members. So, yeah. Meghan, is there anything else that you want to say today before we put a final wrap that you haven't said? And then please verbalize, and I'll have it in the notes, but verbalize how people can find out more about
Sure.
Guard Up.
Sure. So if I'm going to verbalize one thing, it would be my talking CEO to CEO's pitch. Okay.
Do it.
All right. CEO to CEO. Check in with your staff.
Yes.
See where they are. Really allow even a degree of vulnerability. Yes. You don't want to, here's the key thing. I mean, every CEO knows this. You don't ever want to get to a point where your staff are worried about you.
Yeah. You don't want to let them see you sweat.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do, I really do believe in what I think they call it the reverse pyramid, where the higher up you are in the scheme of things in your company, the more important you have to be there at the bottom supporting the rest.
Yeah.
And if your staff do not feel sufficiently supported, if they feel lost in their work or undirected, if they're stressing out, you need to change that. It comes from you, the leader. And if you are worried about your staff overworking, working 80 hours a week, not taking their breaks, then you need to take your breaks. And you need to not be working 70, 80 hours a week, or at least don't tell them about it. It is. And you need to basically, they're going to take their cues from you. If you're stressed out, they're stressed out. That's just how it goes. Mm-hmm. If you feel confident, or at least display confidence, then they're going to start to feel it. But they are looking to you for guidance, and they're looking for you to set the tone. And that's the culture. So make no mistake about it. If you're frustrated with the output of your staff, it's down to you.
Ooh,
It's what's the culture you are setting. And if you are not allowing, because what happens is when our company is under a lot of financial strain right now, I'll be honest with you, we're not getting the same camp enrollment we had. We're getting some, thankfully. We're getting people go, online camp might just be a thing that works for us. But it's not easy for us. But that's okay, because I know this is temporary, because I know I have the best team in the world, and we are really going to persevere and make our way through this. And that's the message I'm constantly giving them, is that they are, yes, it's tough and tight right now, and we're working as best we can, but we also have to play, but we also have to talk, we also have to have some fun, because why be in a company about creativity and stories and fun if you're not having it too? And our three biggest values are courage, honor, and compassion. We're always talking about that, and compassion has to come from the top. If you don't have compassion for your staff, then they're not going to have compassion for you or for what your company's experiencing and going through. And then the three modes that we talk about for developing all of our programs: safe, fun, educational. So are my employees safe? Are they taking care of themselves? Are my employees having fun? At least, and it's not like I'm spending most of their time, just taking little bites throughout the week to check in with them and play and have fun and joke around. And then educational, or in our sense, work.
Yeah.
So it's really got to be in that order, I feel, for our company. And it's got to be that way for most companies. And if it's not, you've got to look deep and hard at why you're in the business and what your motivation is, because your people have to be a very big part of that. So that's pretty much it. For how people can get a hold of us is go to guardup.com, guardup.com. And it's actually Guardian Adventures now. We had a pivot there, a sort of rebranding where we're called Guard Up because we used to be very big into martial arts and sword fighting and everything. And now we use all that to actually educate. So, but we are running online summer camps and online programming. We do week-round programming every day of the week. We're doing programming for our clients. And we also do corporate retreats and other programs where we help companies by coming in and doing an online zombie adventure, where they have to figure out how to keep the zombie invasion from happening. And we do it all like this, in a face-to-face environment, through storytelling and then a few graphics where they have to make some choices, and they come together as a team and they're learning to play, and they're blowing off some steam and they're bonding so that they can feel better about the work that they're doing.
So much of that is just wonderful. It has so many levels and so many opportunities. And I hope people who are listening and viewing go online and to look you up. There's just so many different ways to get at it, to your point, regardless of age and regardless of industry. And, I would be a betting person, Meghan, that when you get settled in, that you guys are going to keep the evolution and the creativity going, and that you probably will never stop your newfound online, and you will keep both of them going. And it allows people to participate with you in a different way because of the online presence, regardless of where they are. And it's so cost effective. You don't have to bring your team. You don't have all those traveling expense pieces. So, it's a great way to do something fun and unique and different, and to show appreciation while you're building what right looks like inside of your team, to your point. So
thank you. And on top of that, I'm hearing a lot of the bigger companies. Twitter announced you do not have to ever come back to the facility.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're allowing all of their employees to just work remotely. And I'm like, that's interesting. So their team bonding events, then their hiring structure completely changes. Now you can hire somebody in a different state because they don't have to commute, but they're still going to be looking for those bonding experiences. And that's where we can come in and provide those type of corporate training environment for them to come together and play.
Absolutely. You know, we've moved from so many, I'll say traditional companies said, oh, we
Yes.
cannot have people work remote. And then when it became not an option, it's amazing.
Yes.
When you take that mind shift of not we can't, but what is possible. And I'm hearing more and more companies follow suit, not to mention, you know, again, the CEO hat, when you look at your financials, if you don't need to pay for the physical building, what that does to your profitability, and how might you shift that into other things for your team to create greater engagement and to attract the right type of talent. The possibilities. So thank you again, Meghan, for being on today. Please make sure you share, you comment, you look up Meghan and Guard Up. And remember, you know, culture's not built in a day. Culture's built every day. And it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with everybody that we engage with on the daily basis. Because remember, repairs are far more costly than defining, building, and maintaining. My name is Shelley Smith, and I thank you and I appreciate every one of you who is watching, and have a great day and be safe and be well.